I start with saying good afternoon to members of the media, I would like to again say good afternoon to the trade ministers from about 30 African countries that are assembled here in South Africa for the AGOA forum, the forum that brings together African trade ministers with representatives from the United States. This morning, African trade ministers met, worked through a number of challenges that we face on the African continent, set out an agreed set of ideas that we seek to share with the United States government tomorrow. And at the same time, we also launched a private sector forum bringing together more than 400 business people drawn from across the continent and from the United States that have been working on building business-to-business relationships and partnerships. Simultaneously, a forum of workers from the United States and the African continent has been meeting. Civil society representatives are currently in session. And right now, I would like to welcome my colleagues, the Ministers of Trade, the Commissioner of the African Union, Commissioner Muchanga, a number of leaders from the regional economic communities, to what is an important and symbolic moment in the AGOA Forum. The AGOA Forum is about trade. It's about jobs. It's about economic development. But it's also about Africa's story. And Africa's story is not simply a story of widgets and production processes. It's a story of people, of culture, of our place in history. And in the next hour, we're going to show and demonstrate the richness of African society. We will have to commence a heritage walk. And this heritage walk is an unusual collection of stories about the African continent. And we have great storytellers. Remember, storytelling originated here on the continent, when people were sitting around fires, when the world was unknown, when science and technology was concentrated in villages. And from that, we've developed storytelling. And we have storytellers that will take us on this tour, people like Mandla Dube, Shamil Jepi, Sipho Mdanda, Pitika Ntuli, Ruzi and Craig. They'll all tell a slice of this African story. And what is this story? In this heritage walk that trade ministers will commence with now, after we've cut the ribbon officially, it's going to start with the origins of humanity, because human beings trace their ancestry to this continent, to Africa. And we're going to then also deal with spirituality. Those human beings who engage with nature were also people who try to find meaning and purpose. And then we're going to tell the story, a story of African civilizations, the great trading cities, the cities on the coastline like Sofala, like Mogadishu, like Mombasa, that were trading across the Indian Ocean. But we're also going to tell the story of the hinterland, of urban settlements like Great Zimbabwe and Mapungubwe that manufactured and traded through the great trading cities with the rest of the world. And then we're going to talk about the centers of learning, and we're going to shift from Southern Africa and East Africa to West Africa, and to the legacy of Timbuktu. It's a legacy of learning, of books, of ideas, of people who are animated to record their ideas and what they thought about. And that also represents some important and critical civilizations. I have a book here that takes some of the manuscripts in Timbuktu. Manuscripts that have survived hundreds of years, that records life at a time when Africa was a continent beginning to be exposed to the first start of colonialism, but in many cases still absent the colonial experience. And just at random, when I look at the great trading center of Timbuktu, and I look at this book, this beautiful book put together by Shamil Jepi, he quotes here a writer from the 15th century, Al-Sa'di, who wrote in 1655, who provided information about the societies in West Africa. And he says the commercial center of the region used to be Biru. And then he continues, and I want to quote, "There flowed caravans from every land, and great scholars and pious persons. Wealthy people from every race and every country settled there, including people from Egypt, Aujela Fezan, Guadanes, Tuat, Dra, Tafilalt, Fez, the Sus, Bitu, and others. All of these was transferred to Timbuktu little by little until they were concentrated at Timbuktu. All the tribes of the Sanbaja rejoined the elements. The prosperity of Timbuktu was the ruin of Biru. Its civilization came to be exclusively from the Maghrib, in matters of religion as well as trade. In the beginning, homes of the indigenous residents consisted of enclosures of sticks and straw. Then they were replaced by small houses of clay." Now, my dear colleagues, trade ministers, you won't remember and recognize all these names. But these are places that are associated with modern-day Algeria and Morocco and Ghana and Mali. And so, in those manuscripts, they record Africa's trade with each other. And then we're going to take you to the great civilizations of West Africa. And from there, the history of slavery, Africans caught and transported across the Atlantic in the great movement of people, the involuntary movement of people, where large numbers of Africans fueled the rise of the United States, Brazil, and many other lands. But they'll also show colonialism and the struggle for freedom, for control of our destiny. And they'll show over time the rise of industrial and urban societies, but also the yearning for freedom in those societies. And then they'll focus on the anti-apartheid struggle as a representation of the wider African struggle for freedom. And you'll see there the coming together of people to adopt the Freedom Charter, which became the foundation stone that inspired South Africa's democratic order. You'll see there the brutality of people mowed down because they wanted to walk freely in their own land without a pass. You'll see the Rivonia trial and Nelson Mandela, later on imprisoned on Robben Island. You'll hear his story being told. You'll see also the 1980s as South Africa's townships became ungovernable. And then the transition to democracy, the adoption of a constitution and a new blueprint to bring together a society of many people who had fought for many hundreds of years. And then the Heritage Walk will end with an expression of art. We've brought together the art of Willie Bester and Esther Mashlangu, among others, to show at the end of the struggle something hopeful. And from there, we then have cinema and music. You'll see large, well-known movies with these enormous posters, and those movies have all been shot here somewhere on the African continent. and all of them have been supported by funding, among others, from the DTIC, my department, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. But then we move from history to reconstruction. And we said, while the past has a bitter legacy, legacy is not destiny. We can change who we are and where we are. We need not accept enslavement. We can be free and proud and African. And then it will move to the Made in Africa exhibition, a slice of modern Africa, an Africa that produces cars and clothing, that does trucks and food and beverages, a continent of steel production and medical products, of jewelry, of advanced services, of mining. And we're going to take you through those to demonstrate from a number of African countries, more than 20 African countries showcasing their productive capabilities. And it's done to complement the story in the forums. In the forums we talk about we need to do more trade, we need to beneficiate, take Africa's mineral resources and transform it into advanced products, consumer and capital goods. On the floor of the exhibition, Made in Africa will demonstrate how we're beginning to do it. And so this complements the discussions and the conversations that are taking place, and they serve as an important reminder that those discussions are about Africans rebuilding their society, drawing from the lessons of history and what has made us who we are, but also plotting a different future to the one that has been left as the legacy of colonialism. So I am ready to accompany trade ministers from across the continent. We'll do the heritage tour and we'll then go into the Made in Africa exhibition, showcasing who we are, what we can become, and illustrating to the United States and to other countries across the world the new Africa, a young Africa. So thank you very much.
We now declare the exhibition officially open.